Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. So we are continuing with the challenge tournaments. We have a brand new one that started today, and that is Spider's Den, using only champions from the Dark Elves. Now this tournament is live, so we can go ahead and check on the rewards. Unfortunately, once again, there is no Void Shard on the rewards on the right. There is an Ancient Shard, there are some tight event points, and there is the same Eternal Soul Coins here up for grabs at 8,000 points, which is a lot higher than the one for Fire Knight, but arguably Spider is substantially easier to do in a less amount of turns. So I think the first thing that you'll notice, and it's quite obvious, is that this tournament is going to be extremely competitive. This is a relatively easy dungeon for a lot of people, especially in the end game, to do really quickly. You're going to see a lot of teams that are Lydia and triple or quadruple Cold Hearts just blowing through stage 20 like it's nothing in 15 seconds or less. And so those people who can do that just threw a bunch of gems or threw a bunch of energy at it, and they're just done on day one. So expect that in your group. But again, always check to see if you have an easy group. I clearly do not, but you never know. Check your group and see if you have an easy one, but this is probably not going to be the one where you're going to be able to top out and win the Relentless like potentially other tournaments. It's also worth noting that this tournament is going to be fairly difficult if you're not in the end game due to the lack of diverse champions in this particular faction. So with that in mind, my first recommendation is that if you're going for the Titan event, I mean, if you're not, then this doesn't really matter, because it's going to be really competitive and it's going to be hard to win the Relentless. But if you are going for the Titan event, you can skip 250 points total. So it is a bit of a gamble because we don't know all of the events over the next couple of weeks that are going to offer points. But dropping this 50 in a tournament that is relatively hard to participate in is probably worth the risk. So if you're not trying to go all the way out to the Eternal Coins or anything like that, or if you can't really make a team that works, I'll show you my team and maybe you can make that work. But if you don't have a team that works, then I would take the risk and gamble and say, all right, we're minus 50, we can skip another 200 across the rest of the events, but still be able to max out the Titan event. So taking a look here at the stages, what do I recommend you do? Now this one gets a little bit more complicated because, as I mentioned a bit earlier, the faction is not fully flushed out in terms of dealing with the Spider. So obviously the first name that would come to your mind with this dungeon would be Coldheart, and she's great for reducing the turn meter, but there's no AoE HP burn. And so for stage 24, stage 25 on normal mode, you don't really have that tank and burn strategy where you can kind of just sit, protect your team, CC the Spiderlings, and just let them HP burn the main Spider while keeping her turn meter suppressed with Cold Hearts, because we're missing the AoE HP burn. So with that in mind, I would recommend that you probably build a team for stage 20, just because that's the limit of being able to do full damage with enemy max HP hits, i.e. using your Cold Hearts and some debuffer. But also make a special note to stage 16, where it is Spirit Affinity. It's not Void like some of the other dungeons, but it is relatively easy to just kind of use one debuffer and then a bunch of AoE champions to just continuously kill the Spiderlings, and you can kill the boss that way. Probably not going to be very fast and take a lot of turns, and it's also a relatively low stage, hence why I think that this is probably going to be difficult for a lot of people if you aren't in the end game with a team that can do it relatively quickly. However, thinking in the same vein as stage 16, bringing a lot of debuffers and AoE champions, you can actually do potentially do some of the lower stages of hard mode, because this is back to the strategy of just killing the Spiderlings, because that deals damage to the main Spider. And so if you can handle it, if you have champions that are built well enough and you incorporate Hex, which is very important, Mithril is definitely a must-have on a team like that. You can see I did some tests. That's not where I ended up settling, but I did some tests just to see how hard it was to do. But you bring in some Hex, bring in Mithrala, I guess a Hex champion, you bring in a debuffer of some sort, and then you bring in as many nukers as you can. You just continuously kill the minions as quickly as possible, and eventually you kill enough of the minions to kill the main Spider, and that can also be relatively quick as well. So I leave that up to you. Decide for yourself, if you're participating in this at all, which of the approaches you'd like to take. In my particular instance, I tried kind of combinations of different ones, but I did end up settling back on stage 20, and this is the team we have here. Pretty basic and straightforward. We have Mithril in there, increased attack, hex, and increased defense, as well as the cleanse for the poisons and the shield to protect. We have Lydia, she's our main debuffer. We have 2 cold hearts in here, of course, enemy max HP. They can just chunk the health of the boss, as we'll see. And then a Painkeeper, who's our mini Kymar here, mini Kymar, because it's just 1 turn, but resetting them slightly so that they can get back to the Heartseekers slightly faster and then be able to kill the main spider. So this team is pretty intuitive and straightforward, but I'll go ahead and run it for you guys anyway so you can see it in action. It takes usually somewhere under a minute. I forget exactly how many turns that is, somewhere in the 20s, I think. But as you'd expect, we have Lady coming in, placing our debuffs, decrease defense, and weaken. We have Mithrala coming in with the Hex. Then we have the 2 Heartseekers from the 2 Cold Hearts. Note that the Spiderlings do die because of the Hex damage, which is where you can take advantage of that, specifically more in hard mode. It doesn't do anything for you in this case in normal mode. Well, I guess it saves animation time because all the Spiderlings don't attack you necessarily, so that is a benefit. So we have the mini reset coming in from Painkeeper. We have a heal here, so Lydia and Mithrala are ready to go. We had a reflex proc on that Cold Heart, so she got her Heartseeker back a little bit earlier, and then the second Cold Heart going as well with hers. As usual, let me show you the builds on these champions featured in this team. And again, this is not for you to copy their builds necessarily, but it's just to show their stats so you understand how and why the team works. So this is my Mithrala Life Bane in Perception and Untouchable. You guys who have been long viewers of the channel have seen her build many times. But we have 63k on the HP, 4.4k on the defense. Don't care about attack, she's defense based. 261 on the speed, 200 resistance, and 588 accuracy. This is clearly an arena build, hence the high accuracy and effectively high resistance and high speed and high survivability. So she's not specifically built for this dungeon. This is just her in her arena build. This is my Lydia the Death Siren, who is in my speed-tuned clan boss build here with a mix of speed, resistance, and perception. So pretty tanky again, 56,000 on the HP, 3,500 on the defense, speed-tuned to 269 precisely. Then I stacked her with as much resistance and accuracy as I could muster because I do like to use her in arena from time to time, just as kind of denying revival on certain things, going against a Duchess, for example. So decently high resistance and just enough accuracy to still be serviceable here or in arena, but also in Doom Tower Hard. Cold Heart number 1 is in Reflex, as I mentioned, and Perception as well. Her total stats built more for survivability and damage, so 36k on the HP, 3.2k on the attack, not really focusing that, 15 or 1600 on the defense, really low, but her base is super low. 250 on the speed, very fast. So I do use her for Dark Fae and other areas where I just need a fast and efficient Reflex Cold Heart. 70% crit rate, so that's all we need for the Heartseeker, 223 on the crit damage, and a 353 on the accuracy, because that's what we need for hard Doom Tower. Cold Heart number 2. This is my Scarab King Specialist Cold Heart in Destroy and Perception with a Blood Shield Ring, I might note. It's pretty much the exact same build as the other one, but 38k on the HP, 2700 on the attack, 1500 on the defense, 201 on the speed, much slower in fairness, but Destroy is kind of limiting my capability there. It's not my best, or not my most plentiful gear set, so I made do with what I could. Again, 70% crit rate is all we need for the Heartseeker, 235 on the crit damage, and 356 on the accuracy. And lastly, we have the clearly I definitely use this champion in other areas of the game with her maxed out gear and the shield set and resilience, but it is Painkeeper 5-star, and I think she might actually be booked, but she's also a rare, so it's really relatively easy to do. So you can kind of ignore the base stats because she is clearly not maxed out on any of the gear pieces, at least the bottom pieces, and she's also 5-star, so she's not going to have a bunch of tanky stats. But 43k on the HP, 1100 defense, 187 on the speed. Again, the boots are not maxed. I don't really care about the crit rate or damage, and then some resistance, I guess, is what I put on her, 292. I don't know. This build isn't that particular. I just put some gear on her. The shield set helps protect the team from taking a couple hits early on, so that's basically it. Now, as far as substitutions are concerned, as I've kind of hinted throughout the video already, there really aren't that many options in the Dark Elf specifically for this fight. So if you don't have a few Cold Hearts, you're kind of SOL, aside from just throwing a bunch of nukers at a low level or low stage of hard mode, or doing a really low stage of spider that probably isn't worth it for the turn attack, the purposes of a turn attack. But nonetheless, let's mention a few champions. Starting off with turn meter control, we already talked about Cold Heart, of course. Vizix, if you've played for long enough, 270 days. On the A1, if you turn off the other abilities, although you might want the provoke if you want to prevent other teammates on your, or other allies on your team from getting attacked, but she does have the provoke. Decreased speed is also pretty useful. Ally protection also does protect your teammates, but on the A1, she has the kind of Armiger-like ability here, here, where it's a 30% turn meter steal, effectively, because she fills the champion's turn meter equal to the amount that the target loses. So if she's stealing 30% HP across the 2 hits, so she can kind of just keep going, cycling through and keep stealing turn meter from the spider and just kind of snowball and never let her get a turn. Honorable mention to Lua, who does have a Heartseeker-like ability that's not enemy max HP, it's just based on attack, but it is also on a 4-turn cooldown, and it fully depletes the target's turn meter by 100%. And then also an honorable mention to Sylar, who used to be one of the the best choices for CC when it came to the tank and burn type strategy, or at least early game spider, because she has an AoE on the A1, another AoE on the A2, so great in a stun set. Decreased accuracy also landing lessens the chance that your allies will take damage from poisons, and then most importantly here, dropping turn meter by 40% and placing AoE decreased speed. When it comes to debuffers, just like the demon spawn, it is fairly slim pickings. Of course, we've already highlighted Lydia the Death Siren, who you can get from Faction Wars. If you have Marinix, she can work, but she might be the wrong affinity depending on the stage, but she does have decreased defense and Hex as well, which is kind of a nice combination. Ghostborn can also do it. He has an irresistible decreased defense, so he's very powerful, increased attack as well. If you happen to have him, he's great for this role. Honorable mention to Spider, who does have a decreased defense, big version, and then the weak version of Weaken on a 5-turn cooldown. So it's not the strongest. It's like a mini Lydia, but it's also on a 5-turn, not a 3-turn cooldown, and it's also the weak version of Weaken. So it's not a 100% chance to place that Weaken. It's only 100% chance to place decreased defense. So not the best option, but that's what an honorable mention means. And of course, Madame Saris, typically seen in the arena, but nonetheless, she does have on a 4-turn cooldown a chance to place decreased attack and decreased defense. So you can take less damage and deal more damage, not the opposite. That'd be bad. And as far as the supports go, we already mentioned Mithrala and the power of Hex as far as spreading out damage, particularly on the lower hard mode stages. But other than that, of course, Painkeeper, who we showcased as far as being the mini reset champion. The rest of them, I could mention the other revivers, like Rand the Conjurer can do a revive, Kaden can do a revive, but if you're having to revive your allies, you're probably taking too many turns anyway, and this probably isn't the tournament for you, as we've said a few times now. So they can work if you're working on a traditional spider team, but in the case of turn attack, where you want to kill it as quickly as possible, if you have people dying, you're probably on the wrong stage, or you're just doing the strategy wrong. And so I would employ you to come up with or use some other strategy that does not necessarily revolve reviving your team, reviving your allies. So yeah, that's going to do it for the strategy guide for the Dark Elf Spider Tournament. Let me know in the comment section down below if you're going to be participating in this event, and what's the team that you came up with, and what stage you're going to be running as well, because that does matter in the context of this particular tournament. I'll reiterate that this tournament should be pretty competitive, so be forewarned, but of course check your group just to see if that's not the case. So I would kind of just erase the possibility of winning the Relentless from your mind, and then also the milestones are pretty high up there, even if you want to participate in the Titan event points or go for the Eternal Soul Coins. So the choice is yours. You know the information, you know what it's going to take in order to get there, and it's up to you whether or not you're willing to spend the energy to do so. So as always, if you found this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below, and if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to subscribe to the channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.